Hi, I'm Sanoz Tahernia, and I'm here for the Distinguished Alumni Awards for the College of Communication, and with me today is Mariette DiChristina. Hi Mariette, how are you?
Hi Sanoz, I'm awesome, great to be with you.
Thank you, it's great to be with you as well.
Thanks, and here at Boston U, awesome.
Yes, welcome back.
Thank you.
Well, I'd like to ask you, why did you choose to study at COM?
Well, it's always an adventure, isn't it, what you're going to do with your life. And I remember I was looking at two schools, and one of them was COM and one was another, which I will not be naming. And I went to my father for advice, and it's always good, I think, to go to a trusted person for advice. And he said, Mariette, they both seem like really great programs. He said, I think I can count on you to always do your work. And I was such a serious young person, I have to tell you. He said, but go to Boston. There's so much energy there. That school just radiated it. And learn how to be a young person and take an adventure. So that's why I went to Boston U.
So thanks to your dad.
One of the reasons, thanks to my dad, a very wise man.
So how did your studies in journalism prepare you for your role, your current role at the Scientific American?
So when at Scientific American, well, let me back up just a minute to the journalism piece, because then there's the science journalism piece.
Right.
So the journalism piece, when you're learning how to drive a car.
Yes.
And first you need to read the book and get the lessons, and then you need to practice a little on the road. You have some people helping you out. And then you get in the car and you really learn how to drive. And I think I've heard it takes something like 5 years to really get good at it. And I gotta tell you, journalism is a little like that. Somebody had to teach me the rules of the road, and I had great professors here at BU. I had to read the books, I had to get in the car and start to learn to drive, and after a few years I eventually figured it out. The science piece of it is a lovely overlay. I recommend science journalism to anybody who's really curious about the world. I guess a lot of us are, but curious about how the world works and how, if you take an evidence-based view of the world, you can improve your life or everybody's lives. Like everything we're doing right now, so the clothes we're wearing, the cameras we're using, the lights here, all of these things were invented, improved through science.
Right.
And so science journalism to me is a wonderful way to learn lots of stuff and then share it with other people so they too can take it out and improve the world.
So have you always been interested in science?
I love science ever since I was a kid. I was a little kid who had to have a microscope, begged, and not only just to have a microscope, but I wanted to have 1,000 power because 1,000 sounded so amazing.
Of course.
Yeah, and I had to have a chemistry set, and then I had to do my own experiments. So yeah, I always loved science. What I didn't know is that there was another thing which could combine a love of writing and communication and expression through visual design with science. That took a while to figure out, and I figured it out here at BU.
So you decided to hit the journalism path first and then the science.
Yeah, well, it actually kind of happened together. When I was an undergraduate at BU, I took took the intro to science writing class.
Right.
I remember I had Professor Brand. He's a terrific professor. We're still actually in touch decades later. And he's the one who showed me that, hey, this fun you're having in a class is actually something you could do as a career. But when I became a senior, still an undergraduate, there was a relatively new graduate program in science writing at Boston U.
Right.
And I thought, oh my goodness, science plus writing, and you can get paid for this? That's amazing, yay. So although I was an undergrad, I tucked my way into that graduate program, which is something I think every journalist has to learn, to tuck their way into meetings and other things.
Yes.
So I tucked my way into that class, and I sold some stories out of that class, and it just put me on a path that I never looked back. So although my first job was as a newspaper reporter covering municipal news, and I would slip in science stories. I just didn't tell the editors that's what I was doing. They were just great stories, right?
You'd finagle it in.
Yeah.
That's awesome. As a woman in the journalism world and the world of science, how did you cope with that? I mean, what kind of challenges did you face, and how did you kind of deal with all of that?
I think that's a great question, and obviously I'm all in favor of women succeeding in every capacity, and they have every ability to do that. When I started in the journalism world, naturally there were some fewer women. And when I became editor-in-chief of Scientific American, I was surprised to find that I was actually the first woman editor-in-chief that the magazine had ever had.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
What was interesting for me too, thank you, but what was interesting for me too was not just that, but my response to that, which I want to tell you a quick little story.
Please.
So my instant response was almost I was insulted that people were making such a big deal of the fact that I was the first woman editor-in-chief of Scientific American. And my instant response to a lot of media people who were interviewing me was, Well, I mean, I don't feel that special. I feel like anybody with my skill set could have done this job within the past 20 years. I just happened to be the right person at the right time. And I really had trouble. I remember one particular journalist, she kept probing me on it. And it was a woman writer for one of the business magazines that covers magazines. And she kept saying, well, how will the magazine be different with you as the first woman? And I said, well, how is it different with me as the first woman executive editor 8 years ago? Did you see anything there?
Yeah.
You know, ultimately, my job is to please the audience with fascinating information that makes them feel like they can't wait to come back and learn some more. And I don't know if it was a woman-man thing, but then I thought, let me do what I usually do, which is I go home and talk to, I mentioned my father earlier to you. I went home to talk to smarter people than and so that meant my 2 daughters. So I had 2 girls at the time. They were 9 and, well, let's see, I guess she'd been just a little over 5, the younger one. And so I was talking to Selena, who's now actually a student here at BU.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, Selena and Mallory, the younger one, they were both sort of looking at me. I said, this happened to me at work today. Everybody's very excited that I'm the first woman magazine editor, and I feel kind of funny about it. Like, why are they making such a big deal out of it? What does it mean to you that I am the first woman? You know, what does that even mean? And Selena looked at me very seriously. She said, Mommy, well, of course, it's because everybody needs somebody they can look up to. And I thought, these kids, they saw what I didn't see. Right. Which is that we all need to feel included. And I feel this way, not just about being a woman in journalism or a woman in science writing specifically, but also about science as a topic. I believe that we all need to be invited in. And that's, if I had to pick something that characterized what I hope my editorship represents to people after a while, if they're kind, I hope they'll see that what I was trying to do was invite everybody in. We all have an important role to play. We all have valuable perspectives, and nobody should feel like they're not included.
So what advice would you give to women, girls, your daughters, if they wanted to follow your footsteps or go into the path of journalism or science? What would you tell them?
Yeah, the first thing I'd always say is, why not you? You're just as smart as everybody else. You work just as hard as everybody else. Your ideas are just as good as everybody else. What maybe you haven't realized is that you have that in you. I myself had to have that pointed out to me. And I think I would like to point it out to anybody who comes near me as well. Yeah. You should be included. You have a seat at the table. Take it.
Exactly. It's there for you. What is one piece of valuable advice that you received at COM that you've taken throughout your career?
I don't know if it's valuable is a good word, but one of the things that I learned at COM, which I didn't know before I got here, was that something that animates you, that drives your passions, that solves I have a constant curiosity quest. I want to know what's going on and how it works. I did not know that was actually something you can do, and that it would be such a really fulfilling life's work. I learned that here, and not because I figured it out, but because one of the professors pointed it out to me. The professor I mentioned, Professor Brand, in my first journalism class, I was just having a great time in his class. He's the one, though, who said, I want to see you after class, and asked me, what are you majoring in? And I said, I don't know. He said, well, journalism, you should be in journalism. You're good and you can do this. So he believed in me before I believed in myself. I knew I was excited. He recognized that excitement and gave me a path. Yeah,
professors
I learned that here.
Professors at COM, they still do that. They plant the seed and they kind of nurture it, and the students go. Yeah. So that's awesome.
I was a lucky student.
What advice do you have for new and upcoming journalists?
We're lucky enough to be able to follow our curiosities and passions as journalists, and it's just really, there's something really satisfying about digging out to, an objective truth or your best attempt at it, and then sharing that. But on top of that, I would say for journalists today, that's probably a little different from, well, it's certainly different from when I was coming up, is that same kind of entrepreneurial spirit where you go and own a story. You need to actually now own your career in a different way. Right. Once upon a time, we would go to big news outlets or other places like that, and you had an expectation that, well, the world would never change. And I think the past couple of decades have shown us that the world is under constant change through digital transformation. And our response to that should not be panic or upset or what am I going to do now, but wow, what a great chance for me to own my future. Your job is, we think of jobs as something that happens to us, but they're also something that we happen to them. And I think if I were to give somebody a piece of advice, it'd be think about what drives you and aim at it. Why not you? Other people are successful and it might look bewildering, but if you're, to be a reporter, you gotta be a little stubborn, you gotta be a little passionate. You must have those or you wouldn't have pursued this career anyway. What's the unique, innovative, fun thing that you wanna do? You can do it. And you can absolutely do it. And it's the same lesson that Jim Brand gave me way back when. You can do it. You're good at this.
Because ultimately, when you do what you love, it doesn't really feel like work or a job.
It never feels like work.
Can you tell me a little bit about the time that you were, that you started at the Scientific American and how you moved up, and what kind of feelings you felt when you were placed into your current role?
So I have a couple of roles now, but I'm going to go back to when I started at Scientific American, which was so long ago. But when I started, it was to be something called an executive editor, which at many magazines, it's the second in command position after the editor-in-chief, and your job is to run the day-to-day operations. So that was how I started at Scientific American. What I didn't know was that it would be so fun to build on that. So Scientific American, even then, had well over a dozen international editions. It's translated today into 14 different languages. Wow. It's the country's oldest continuously published magazine, started in 1845, but it's new every day. And so a thing I wanted to bring to it was how could I help make it new? So we did, we started different new products, we started different spin-off magazines, things like this, and that was great fun. I did that for about 8 years until there was an opportunity to apply for editor-in-chief, and I was delighted to be able to do that as well. There I tried to take the brand out farther, but this time, especially in the digital space, if you think about the past half dozen years or so, I became editor-in-chief really at the end of 2009, beginning of 2010. And I took Scientific American and I thought to myself, I never forget the challenge that was posed to me by my boss at the time, a guy named Stephen Inchcombe, who's based in London. And he said, Mariette, what's your vision? What would you like? And I thought, my vision? And nobody's ever asked me such a wonderful question in my life. What is my vision? What does Scientific American need to do going forward that it didn't do in the past, then 160 so years? And so I thought about that, and I thought about all the touch points we have with our different audiences, from little kids up through people like you and me, up through working scientists. And what did Scientific American, under that big brand umbrella, what did it need to be for each one? And I started a bunch of activities that got pretty good reception, and I really enjoyed it. And it's been great to be editor-in-chief of Scientific American. I also have one more role, which I just want to mention in the past year. Please do. Yeah, because I work for a large company called Springer Nature, which produces a lot of science journals, and they're some of the most impactful in the world. And given the work I had done at Scientific American in the past half dozen years, there are other journals, including Nature itself, which is one of the preeminent journals in the world, that have magazine-style content. And having taken Scientific American along, my bosses wanted to see me bring some of that digital interactivity and so on to the magazine content produced by journals. So also science journalism, but at a slightly different level for slightly different audiences. And I've been doing that for the past year. The title is Director of Editorial and Publishing for the Nature Research magazines. And that's so delightful busy. Too. Oh, it's wonderful. It's never a dull moment. I can't wait to get up and get going to do the next big adventure today. And I wish every student who came to BU had that great privilege, and I know one of the great things about BU is you give them the tools that you need to do that.
That must be so great. You wake up and you're just like, let's take on this day. Let's do it.
I really do feel that way.
That's amazing.
It's not just wake up, it doesn't matter, because I have a global team. I'm thinking, let's see how we can do this day all day long, because I got people in Europe, people in Asia Pacific, and it's really exciting. So, and I feel very privileged and lucky, and I kind of can't believe it. But hopefully they won't figure it out, and they'll let me do it a little while
That is your reality, and you just hold on to that. So what does being a COM alum mean to you?
Well, what it means is being part of a club of people, and I think we who work in journalism, we work on things because partly because of the joy of discovery and the joy of sharing, but also we recognize that our various media outlets are aspirational. Right. So I work for Scientific American, and I work for people, actually when it was started in 1845, it was with the idea of creating more scientific Americans. And goodness knows we could use more scientifically minded people anywhere. So I think in the same way, being part of the Club of Calm is kind of aspirational. We would like to be members of the club of very bright people who share this wonderful experience and then can take it out to others.
Well, I'm excited to be a part of the same club as you.
Keep going for it, girl. You can do it. You can do this.
I will. Well, thank you so much. It was so
really
great
fun.
meeting you. I'm so honored to have met you, and congratulations on winning your award today.
Congratulations to you too. I think you're going to be awesome.
Thank you.